The main task of the operation is to capture those sighted alive.
The video you are watching now is real, and it was released by Ukraine itself in August 2024. These are dramatic images of a military operation. Boats cutting through the waters of the Black Sea at high speed, explosions, and Ukrainian soldiers advancing into a territory that, although tiny, is of great importance to whoever controls this region of the Black Sea. This small strip of sand is called the Tendra Peninsula. It's just 8 square kilometers in the Black Sea. But its location is absolutely crucial. The small island is located just 75 kilometers from Crimea, from where it's possible to control vital naval routes, and it also serves as a Russian outpost on Ukrainian territory. In February 2024, Ukrainian special forces carried out a daring operation to retake this island. But despite Ukrainian bravery and determination, the Russian defenses were well prepared. The result? According to Russian sources, around 20 to 25 Ukrainian soldiers lost their lives in combat. Ukrainian intelligence, on the other hand, denies this version, saying there were only 4 casualties on their side. But their warriors destroyed several pieces of Russian equipment and fortifications. Despite all these challenges, one thing became quite clear that day. Ukraine was not simply going to accept that a piece of its territory would remain in Russian hands. Because when it comes to taking back what is rightfully theirs, Ukrainians don't give up easily. So they regroup, plan better, and come back stronger. And now I'm going to tell you the impressive story of how Ukraine finally took back what was always theirs. But before we get to the victorious operation of July 2025, I need to show you what happened a few months before that operation. You just saw images of, in February of that same year, Ukraine would carry out its first operation on the island. But the soldiers who took part at that time were not just any military unit. They belonged to Ukraine's 73rd Naval Special Operations Center, one of the most elite and respected units in the country. These were the same soldiers who had taken part in the liberation of the famous Snake Island. Experienced warriors, veterans of complex operations. 5 assault boats set out that early morning of February 28th. Each vessel carried highly trained soldiers, specialized equipment, and the determination to reclaim Ukrainian territory. But there was something they didn't know. Russia was waiting for them. When the boats approached the shore of the Tendra Peninsula, they were met with a hell of fire. The Russian forces had turned that small island into a fortress. High-tech radars detected the Ukrainian approach. Electronic warfare systems interfered with communications, and well-prepared defensive positions poured fire on the attackers. Major General Serhiy Krivonos, a respected Ukrainian military figure, did not spare criticism of the operation. He described the attack as a maneuver that cost precious lives without achieving concrete objectives, and he couldn't be more right. To give you an idea, only one of the 5 boats managed to escape the massacre. But here's what makes Ukrainians different. What could have been just a military tragedy turned into a valuable lesson. Because 6 months later, in August 2024, they came back. And this time, it was different. The second operation was planned in a completely different way. It wouldn't be a frontal assault like in February. It would be a sabotage attack. Quick, precise, and with a planned withdrawal. "12 high-speed vessels set out for the Tendra Peninsula. 8 were carrying special forces, while 4 were loaded with heavy weaponry. The operation was conducted by Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine. The Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine. An organization that prefers to operate in the shadows. The results were impressive. The special forces managed to land, destroy Russian armored vehicles, including a multi-purpose towing light armored vehicle, neutralize enemy electronic warfare systems, and demolish fortifications. After that, they simply disappeared back into the sea. Russia claimed to have destroyed 3 of the 12 Ukrainian vessels. Ukraine denied any losses, but regardless of who was telling the truth about the casualties, one thing was undeniable. Ukraine had proven that it could successfully strike the Tendra Peninsula. There was just one problem. They still hadn't retaken the island, but the third time would be decisive. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Because the final operation in July 2025 wasn't funded only by the Ukrainian government. It was partially funded by the Ukrainian people themselves. There is a project called BARCOS, for the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine. It's an initiative by the Diana Podolian Shuk Charity Foundation, which allows ordinary citizens to fund military equipment for the special forces. And in March 2024, something extraordinary happened. A Ukrainian band joined the foundation to raise money. Together, they managed to raise $248,000. With that money, they bought a high-speed T-12 boat specially designed for military operations. This is not just any boat. It's a 12-meter-long war machine with a reinforced aluminum hull and an advanced navigation system. The boat can reach speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour and has a range of 500 kilometers. It can carry up to 16 fully equipped soldiers. But most importantly, it was designed to be small and fast enough to go unnoticed by Russian radars. And it was exactly this boat that may have been used in the final operation in July. Now imagine the situation. Ordinary citizens, including music fans, funded a military operation that was about to make history. When you think about it that way, every explosion you saw in those videos, every tactical move, every tense moment was possible thanks to ordinary people who decided to support their homeland. But even with the best equipment in the world, the final operation still depended on one thing: superior military intelligence. And that's when Ukraine showed that it had learned all the lessons from previous failures. The July 2025 operation was a masterpiece of military planning. The main task of the operation is to capture the spotted ones alive.
Visibility up to 8 men. Enemy in combat position.
Because this time, they weren't just going to attack the Russian defenses. They were going to blind and deafen the Russians first. That's because Russia had turned the Tendra Peninsula into a surveillance center with cutting-edge technology. 2 main systems protected the island. The first was a radar called ROSA, It's a ground surveillance system that could detect small targets like drones and boats up to 50 kilometers away. The Russians could literally see anything approaching the island. The second system was even more sophisticated, an electronic warfare complex called ZONT, which in Russian means umbrella. This system created an invisible protective bubble of 500 meters around the island. Any drone that tried to approach would be jammed. It would lose its control signal and fall into the sea. Together, these two systems made the Tendra Peninsula practically impenetrable. But Ukraine had identified exactly these two weak points, and their strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. On the night of July 28, 2025, the operation began.
Go ahead, Command, for us. Within Naval Operations, Department of Active Actions. Our task is to accomplish the mission and coordinate. Tendra, now we are here in our land, Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are coming back and taking back what is theirs.
It began not with soldiers, but with drones. Ukrainian missiles or drones first hit the pink radar. With a precise strike, the Russians lost their eyes. They could no longer see what was happening around the island. Next, precise attacks destroyed the ZONT system. The invisible protective bubble disappeared. Now the Russians were blind and deaf. Only after the defenses were neutralized did the high-speed boat approach the shore. The Ukrainian soldiers landed on a beach where the Russian defenders couldn't see them coming. They couldn't detect their movements and couldn't coordinate an effective defense. The result was devastating for the Russians and perfect for the Ukrainians. The Russian garrison was completely eliminated and the command post was destroyed. Visit for more information. Military equipment was demolished, and then the moment everyone was waiting for happened. A Ukrainian soldier walked to the highest point of the island and raised the blue and yellow flag of Ukraine. 3 attempts, 2 failures, and a final victory. Do you want to know the most impressive thing? That last operation had a total of 0 Ukrainian casualties. When the soldier spoke to the camera, his words perfectly summed up what had happened. Now we are here, on our Ukrainian land. The Ukrainians are returning and taking back what is theirs. But the recapture of the Tendra Peninsula is much more than just a tactical victory. It's a gigantic strategic problem for Vladimir Putin, because now Putin faces an impossible dilemma. He has 2 options, and both are terrible for Russia. The first option is to try to retake the island, but that means diverting troops and resources from other active fronts of the war. The Russian army is already overwhelmed, trying to maintain offensives in Donbass and defending positions in Sumy. Pulling forces from those locations to retake a small island would further weaken their main operations. The second option is simply to accept the loss and let Ukraine keep the island. But that's equally problematic. Symbolically, it would be admitting that Russia can lose territory it has occupied for years. For the Russian troops, it would be a clear message that not even their most defended positions are safe. Even worse, the Tendra Peninsula has now become a Ukrainian forward base just 75 kilometers from Crimea, a springboard for future operations, a thorn in the side of Russian forces in the region. Ukraine has not only regained territory, it has imposed a permanent strategic problem on its enemy. And this victory is part of something much bigger. A naval campaign that has systematically destroyed Russian power in the Black Sea. Since the beginning of the war, Ukraine has been conducting an asymmetric warfare campaign at sea. Even without having a powerful conventional navy, they have used domestically made Neptune missiles, Western-supplied missiles, and increasingly sophisticated naval drones to attack the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The result has been devastating. Approximately one-third of the Russian fleet has been destroyed. The impact was so great that Russia was forced to withdraw its most valuable ships from ports in Crimea to safer bases, far from the reach of Ukrainian attacks. This effectively broke the Russian naval blockade and returned control of the western Black Sea to Ukraine. The recapture of the Tendra Peninsula now represents the next phase of this war. Ukraine is no longer just sinking Russian ships. Now it's landing troops and recapturing islands. From a small 8-square-kilometer strip of sand, Ukraine sent a clear message to the whole world. When it comes to reclaiming Ukrainian territory, they won't stop. They will learn from failures. They will plan better. They will get resources from wherever necessary. And they will come back stronger. The Tendra Peninsula may be small on the map, but its reconquest represents something much bigger. It's a warning to Russia that its days of naval dominance in this region may be numbered. And what did you think of this story? Did you know about the Tendra Peninsula before this video? Leave your answer in the comments. If this video brought you valuable information, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. See you next time.